Good evening, everybody. I want to talk to you tonight about this book, Cage Fighter by Nick Larkin. Now, as anybody who knows anything about the world of feeder fishing will know, Nick Larkin and his brand, Nisa Feeders, are very, very well known and very, very well respected, and with good reason, to be honest. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a personal background into how I met Nick and got to know him, and then I'll go into what I think of the book and what I like about it, what I don't like. First and foremost, Nick. I travelled to the Norfolk Broads as a kid fishing with a family. My family were pleasure anglers, we fished a little bit. And we went down there and I fished the river and it was great. And I remember then, in the angling press, Nick Larkin was a name you'd see a lot. And it wasn't until a few years later when I worked for Pole Fishing magazine, I think it was, that I actually travelled down and started fishing a few of the matches on the River Yare after being inspired by Bob Nudd on a feature to go down and give it a go. And Nick's just one of them people. He's got a real presence in the room at the draw and everything like that. Everybody wanted Nick's opinion on what he thought about the river and their pegs on that particular day, because being tidal, these rivers really are a bit of a law unto themselves. And it became very apparent to me very quickly that Nick was one of the most respected anglers in the room on those festivals. And there were some real, superstars of the sport there asking Nick for his perspective. And obviously, as time went on, I got to know Nick myself, and I could see why. He's not only a brilliant angler and a real innovator, a man who's responsible for many of the feeder designs that today we take for granted, but he's also a bloody nice chap, just a lovely bloke with a very sort of, how can I put it, stoic, relaxed attitude to life, and he's always got time for a chat. And to be honest, he's quite inspirational in that way, and I always like to think that I approach my fishing in a similar way to what Nick does. So on to his book. He actually rang me up about, I don't know, it might be 3 or 4 years ago now, as he was sort of thinking about writing this. And he asked my opinion, whether I thought it'd be a goer, how good I thought it'd be. And I gave him an honest view. To me, any sort of book in angling nowadays has got to be a labour of love, because the numbers of anglers out there isn't big enough to sell hundreds of thousands of copies as you would have done maybe a few years ago, when there was no YouTube, there was no fishing videos for free, and people had to rely on printed media. And so I said to Nick, look, don't think you're going to make millions out of this. You'll be lucky, if it covers the print costs. And Nick wasn't fazed by that at all. He just wanted to get his word out there, his point of view out there, and basically give some other anglers, some friends of his and some people he respects, a bit of a voice in there as well. And that's exactly what he's done. And about, 6 or 8 months later, this landed on my doorstep. And what a book. I'm going to just flick through it first, folks, just to give you a little preview as to what it looks like. I'm hoping you can see that. You can see this is not one of these books. It's a massive, dense bed of text or anything like that. There's a lot of pictures in there, some rig type information, some diagrams. It's just a really well put together, illustrated piece. So the first thing I want to say is the contributors. Nick is the bedrock of the book. He sort of contributes more than anybody else in there, as you'd expect, and some lovely anecdotes about the fishing in Norfolk. He starts it off actually by a comparison between anglers and danglers, i.e. people who go fishing, and something I can relate to a lot. You can see the people who are hooked and the people who really want to try and become a good angler. They're the anglers. And you see the ones who maybe are a lot more flippant and look at it as a pleasure and as an escape, which is absolutely fine, but they're the danglers. And from that point in, it leads you into his mind, how he thinks about fishing, because he's a real innovator, not just in how he develops the feeders and things, but how he takes other ideas from other people and moves them forward and brings them on. One of my favourite pieces of this book, I'm going to see if I can find it actually, is actually about breeding gozzers. Now, those who don't know what gozzers are, they're actually very soft maggot type larvae that you can breed yourself from flies. And You can see that. There's some quite graphic images there, but the title of that particular section is Hearts in My Shed, which really caught my eye as I went through. The contributors in here, I mean, I am biased. I'm the first person here to say I'm biased because Nick's now become a good friend of mine and he's picked some other really good friends to contribute in here. Cathal Hughes, when I first set Catchmore Media up, Cathal went out of his way to really help me. He paid for me to go over to Ireland and film with him over there. Just a real decent man who wanted to sort of help Catchmore succeed, really. And he taught me an awful lot about Irish feeder fishing while I was over there. I mean, I'd never been until a couple of years earlier when I went over to do some work with Cathal for Pole Fishing Plus, I think it was. But, you know, one of Ireland's very best anglers, a real innovator in his own right. And he's contributed a chapter about the fishing in Ireland. That's brilliant. My old mate, Paul Glenfield. Now, Glenzie and I have been mates for a long time. I was quite surprised how clean that section of the book was kept. He's very tame in here. I don't know what's happened to Paul lately, whether Joe's sort of calmed him down. But yeah, it's a very interesting chapter. A lot about fishing, obviously, as you'd expect in the Oxford area. And some really interesting points in there about catching some chub on the Thames, which I really enjoyed. And then, possibly my favourite chapter. And also, I must be honest, I'm sorry, Steve, I don't want to offend you, but I didn't expect it to be. But Steve Clark has written a lovely, lovely piece called Bunghole about when he won the Division 1 National. And the thing I love about this, Steve's a brilliant writer. He just carries you on the journey with him. You know, it's not... There is obviously technical information about how he fished on the day, what he used, and how he caught, but I think I more prefer the way he sort of takes you on that almost dream day. I mean, how much would you love to win a Division 1 National, let alone set a Division 1 National Championship record like Steve did? And he sort of carries you through the journey. It's just brilliant, you know, right to the point, obviously, where he wins the trophy and he gets a daft hat for it, and he's on, I think he said he's on the Medway the day after, and he's got to wear this, so he's going to leave the barber rod in the garage, but wear this daft Division 1 hat. There's a picture of it in there somewhere. You'll appreciate that. This chapter's by Jim Gear and John Adamson as well, which are, you know, really, really nice to read. It's just a brilliant book. I can't sign off on it either by mentioning probably two of the best known people who are in there. But the way it's written, you know, it all just weaves together so beautifully. But there's a great chapter by Phil Ringer about how fish feed underwater based on some underwater filming he's done. You'll probably have seen, a lot of you, the underwater video that he did over in Holland. It's brilliant. And I think perhaps what makes his insights in here even more valuable than the video is you actually get a real perspective of the lessons he took from that filming. So what he learnt about feeder fishing from filming that video has gone in this book, and it's really, really interesting. And finally, my old mate, Dean Barlow. Now, it's clear from reading this that Nick and Dean and Dean's father Frank go back a long way. He writes about stopping at the guest house in Nottingham and going out and getting drunk in a piano bar till the early hours. And then how Dean's dad Frank helped Nick's team. I think he said it's Gillingham AC from memory in here, or Beccles AC, one of those Norfolk-Suffolk towns anyway. Helped him frame, they came 5th in one of the nationals after some training with Frank on the river. So there's a real personal link there as well. But you know, again, it's just a wonderful blend of human interest, of technical feeder fishing information, which you can't help but learn from, and of quite a few funny and humorous bits in there as well. It's a really great reflection of the Broadland character, of Nick as a person, and it's probably one of my favourite fishing books that's ever been written. So there you are, folks. That's Cage Fighter by Nick Larkin. If you want to get hold of a copy, you can get one from the Feeders Direct website, and I'll put the address of that on the bottom of the screen now.